I would like to call the Human Resources Committee to order. It's 5:34. Ms. Timmons, the chair of this committee, is unable to make it tonight, so I will be chairing in her stead. Yes, Mr. Kaufman?
Yeah, it's Wednesday, May 23rd.
Okay, thank you.
And we're in the boardroom at North.
Okay, if I can finish, thank you. Okay. As I said, I will be chairing in her stead. I'll do the roll call. Ms. Van Twyver?
Here.
Mr. Mosier?
I'm here.
Mrs. Porter is here, and Ms. O'Gara? Are you here?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Also present, we have Mr. Kaufman and Ms. Hohense. All right, so we're going to go right through our agenda and start off with the best part. And I'm thrilled to welcome Heather Lucy here. If you would like to come up, please. Wherever you...
Yeah, that mic's already on, so I might as well take that one.
Okay. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. And you are our candidate for Nashua High North Assistant Principal. And we'd like to take maybe 25 minutes or so, 25 minutes to get to know you a little bit better. So I will go through and ask the members of the committee first if they have something they'd like to ask you. But before I do that, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe about your accomplishments over the past year?
Sure. My name is Heather Lucy. I'm currently the interim assistant principal at Nashua High School North. I think I've met all of you a few times at different events or at a meeting similar to this. I've been serving for almost 7 months as the interim assistant principal here at North. I'm a proud graduate of Nashua Senior High School. After I graduated, I moved to Connecticut to start pursuing my education. I spent some time at Sacred Heart University obtaining my bachelor's. I then stayed for my master's of arts in teaching, went to Southern Connecticut for a master's in school health, went back to Sacred Heart for an administrative degree. And as I was going to school and learning, I felt very fortunate to be teaching in a few different capacities. So I spent time in a high school very similar to Nashua North. It just had about 600 fewer students. I also spent time at a community college in Bridgeport for about 9 years in the evening, and at a 4-year institution for 4 years in the morning. So I've had many diverse experiences that I think helped prepare me for the role here, a role that I'm hoping to continue in. I've had a wonderful time with my colleagues. I've worked with a great team. The teachers and students are phenomenal. I think in the almost 7 months that I've been here, I've been able to support a multitude of people in the building, get to know people, listen, ask questions, start to serve on some committees, offer thoughts and suggestions, and I'm just trying to be a visible presence and get to know as many people as I can, so people can feel as though that I'm here for the long run and to help them succeed.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Do we have any members of the committee who would have some questions for Ms. Lucy? Ms. Van Twyver.
7 months in the job.
Almost.
Almost.
Next
Well,
week.
Next week? Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Can you tell me what's the hardest thing you had to deal with in the 7 months?
Oh.
At North has been kind of controversy about its, in the past, in the very past about it. So tell me, what's the hardest thing you had to deal with?
Sure. Well, my first day, October 30th, I guess there was a power outage in the district. So I came, I was very excited to start, and the building was dark. And the next day was Halloween. So I think one of the most difficult parts is when you're very familiar with an environment and spending the last 15 years in a different state, you come into a new space and you want to learn as quickly as you can. And I consider myself someone that likes to be knowledgeable and know things right away. So I think a huge adjustment piece has been it's going to take some time to learn. And you have to rely on sometimes, your colleagues to ask questions, and you won't have all that information right away. But there are many resources in the building and a fabulous administrative team that's been very supportive. So I think part of the challenge is just some things are still unknown. It's just learning as quickly as you can, but you also want to learn accurate information and you want to make sure that you're not jumping to any conclusions on anything. But there have been, again, great resources. If I have questions with special education laws specific to New Hampshire, I know the resources I can go speak to. I can consult with my colleagues. I can find the materials that I need to. So I'd say one of the biggest challenges is just still learning specifically what's pertinent to the state of New Hampshire and getting to know the building and all these amazing resources that are here, because there are phenomenal opportunities for students. So I just want to be aware of all of them as quickly as I can.
Also, at North, don't you have students, you deal with the students under a certain part of the alphabet?
I do, yes. I have DO through K.
Which ones?
Students with last names DO through K.
DO through K?
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's very important to know, DO through K.
And one thing that I do love about this school is that you actually travel with your alphabet for the 4 years that they're here. So some students that I'm forming connections right now with as freshmen, I'll get to see them all the way through. So it's nice to have that positive rapport and be able to watch students grow. And even though I've only been here 7 months, I feel like there are some students I've worked with that have come so far. And it's very exciting to see.
And you feel that you have all the support you need to do the job? If you have a question, it's very easily...
I do. I feel very comfortable asking questions and researching information when need be and picking up the phone if I have to. And then once I know it, I'm ready.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. Mr. Mosier, do you have a question?
I just commented about the time spent in Connecticut. I thought it was interesting because I know that Connecticut is a very diverse population. And I'd like to just ask how she fell in with the diversity that is there.
I'm sorry, did you say gelling with the diversity?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, again, this environment is very similar to the population of students I worked with in Stratford, and certainly in Bridgeport, it was a very diverse environment as well. So I'm doing just fine. I love the students. I love the diversity. I love having conversations about things pertinent to this school. I really feel at home here. I felt that way in Connecticut, and I feel as though it's been a seamless transition.
Yeah, because I know Bridgeport and New Haven, quite a mixture of demographics there, and for some people, it provides a bit of a challenge. So, interested to know that you met the challenge.
Thank you. I always welcome challenges.
That's good.
Very good. Ms. Mantwyver?
Yeah, I have another one. I was just reading, you've created 504 plans. Have you done that?
Yes, that's been something new that I've done the first time in Nashua. In my previous school district, that wasn't a responsibility of an assistant principal. Mm-hmm. So I've sat on some teams and some committees and have had the ability to work on creating 504s.
And has that been a lot since in the 7 months, or how many?
It's hard to say numerically. I've probably helped maybe with a handful of the creation of plans. There were many in existence on my caseload before I came. So for some of them, we've revisited or we've had meetings to review what's working, what might need to be amended, but probably a handful since I've been here.
Okay. Mr. Kaufman?
I think Ms. Hohen, I do have a comment, but I think Ms. Hohensee was...
Ms. Hohensee?
Thank you, and I'm glad to see you're back.
Thank
I
you.
spent 10 years in Bridgeport, so it's an old stomping ground, so I'm very familiar with it. It's very different from up here. I call this the Arctic tundra. Down there, it's rather warm. And I'm glad to see you came with your team.
Thank you. Great.
They're very supportive.
They are.
I was wondering if you could just pick 3 things that you'd like to fix to improve. I don't know. What would you suggest? Like, if you had a magic wand, you could fix 3 things.
I'm not sure if I can manipulate the word choice a little bit and improve some things that I would like to help work on next year. That might be just some new additions. One thing I have a vested interest in is instructional rounds for teachers. I considered myself an instructional leader. I loved practicing my craft in the classroom. And I've heard from some teachers that they would like the opportunity to see what their colleagues are doing in rooms. I know right now it's a little bit difficult with some substitute coverage. However, if we could manipulate a plan and I'd work with the administrative team, I'd love to provide that opportunity for teachers. I think we have so many wonderful things going on in the building, housed within, if people could showcase that. When we did that in my former district, we had a team of teachers that would visit other classrooms, and even if it was just one block in a day, you could still make perhaps 4 or 5 visits for 15 or 20 minutes. And just some simple questions to look at, what are the students doing? What is the teacher doing? What evidence of higher questioning techniques do you see present? We focused a lot on Bloom's taxonomy. I know here it's Webb's wheel, same thing, just different jargon. So really looking at our students creating, evaluating, really those higher order parts that are so important for student learning, and then inviting teachers to have conversations. I think that can at first be a bit intimidating. So maybe as a prior step to that, being able to just have collegial snapshots within departments. So perhaps within a department, say for example English, pair up 2 teachers and afford the opportunity to visit a classroom for 20 minutes just to observe what's going on. And it could even branch out further than instruction, even to look at classroom management techniques or behavioral strategies, instructional strategies, so people can learn from each other. I was a teacher that many colleagues came to visit my room last year, and I was working on a peer editing piece with one of my classes, and it was very involved. So students had to really be focused on what they were doing. So for example, when they were looking at a thesis statement, making a star in the beginning and the end, it happened to be an argumentative thesis statement. So I wanted them to highlight the claim. I wanted them to circle the link. I wanted them to, put in pink the reason. I wanted them to write GWC, great word choice, wherever they saw that possible. So there was so much to do, students really didn't have time to be distracted and not focus on the task. And there was a teacher that was visiting from the social studies department who after said, hey, can you please send me that? Because I know I'm not an English teacher, but I could really use that with my, history class, because I don't think mine is as focused and my kids get off task. So it was just a great way to kind of share what you had created, for someone to see something in a different way that they could manipulate and twist into something that would help them be successful, or more importantly, their students be successful. So I think maybe starting with the snapshots and working our way up into instructional rounds, and who knows, maybe it goes farther than that. But I would love to see that, especially for some of our newer teachers in the district. I've had the opportunities to evaluate teachers, and there are great things, but when you make suggestions and you offer to go visit a classroom, at no fault of the teachers, but sometimes things are very busy and you're trying to do what you can. So having some structured time for teachers to do that on the administrative end we've helped support and schedule out, I think would be phenomenal. So sorry, I was a bit long-winded, but I guess that would be one thing, or maybe 2 if you add it into 2. Secondly, I think our school is doing a really good job with safety. One thing that I'm hoping, if I'm here to help with, is to transition to be the co-chair of the safety committee. If that were the case, I would like to see us do a few things in terms of maybe a building walkabout, outside, inside, things that are noticed, kind of revisit some of the evacuation plans that we have present, make sure that all the drills we have, we find time to schedule them in so we're prepared. And I feel right now, in the short time I'm here, we are, but everybody can always be better at it. So taking some time with that. And I think finding some professional development we have some wonderful educators in the building, and I know right now with the binder that the teachers kind of show you what they've done, I think offering a few more things for our teachers, just bringing some opportunities to them, or really showing them, some dates and times that they're able to access some things, and surveying them to see really the voice of the teachers, what they need, what they want, and try to support them in whatever way we can, because they're working with our students the most, and that's critical. Being a teacher, I remember, and I consider myself a lifelong learner and hope to still teach in a different capacity in my current role, but being supported and having opportunities and someone there as a mentor and guide was critical in my success, and I want to make sure that all of our teachers feel that way.
Thank you, and thank you for all your energy.
Thank
I
you.
think you're a good fit for this school.
Thank you.
Mr. Goffman?
Thank you. So I'm very pleased to see you here. I'm glad that you chose to stay and apply for the position. And
Thank you.
please know that when the nomination does get to the board, I would absolutely be supporting that.
Thank you.
I have two questions and a very, very brief intro to the first one. According to the NEASC Endicott survey, and actually Principal Burns validated it during his interview, where approximately 50% of our students here at North, and actually South, it's across the district, believe that competency grading is inconsistent and unfair, and that's the language in the study. So I never said it was going to be an easy question. What do you recommend the district can do to address this?
To be fair, I haven't seen that survey or know all about how the questions are asked and what they were at, but going off of what you said, if that's accurate, the 50%, I think we certainly need to have a conversation with our students. Some of it might be because maybe not everyone has been informed, or perhaps the message hasn't been as transparent as it could be about what competency-based education exactly is. That's not something that we had used in my former district, so that's something that's new to me from the time that I've been here. But if that's what the district is going with right now, definitely making sure that it's communicated not only to the students, but to making sure that all the teachers are on the same page, so it's fair and equitable for all the students. So they feel as though if they're in one teacher's classroom, that the other teacher has the same type of understanding. I know in the limited time I've been here, we have had a few professional conversations after school, and we've brought somebody else in to kind of speak about it as well. It was voluntary, so teachers could decide to come or not. Was the whole school here? No, but there was a large portion of teachers that were there. So I think kind of continuing the conversation, especially from what I understand, it really gives students a chance to showcase competencies and really show that they've kind of commanded skill sets that are necessary in their respective content area, and it gives them different ways to do that. So I like the piece that it fits individualized instruction, but do believe the conversation needs to continue, because at this point I'm not sure if it's been as transparent as it could be, and that's very important moving forward.
Thank you. My second question is, just so you know, I substitute up in Merrimack High School.
Oh, okay.
So today I was a math, I'll actually be a math teacher for the next 2 weeks. So I'm in the school all the time. So my next question has to do with cell phones
Okay.
in the classroom.
Sure.
I see it every day, and I think probably the kids in Merrimack they're the same breed as our kids down here. So for the public's knowledge, and maybe the board members that aren't here, could you kind of give us a very brief introduction to the observation you would make about cell phones in classrooms, how the kids use them, if it's instructional or not?
Sure.
And then maybe some recommendations around that?
Yeah, and again, I haven't, been in every classroom, so I can't vouch for every teacher how they're used. I believe we have this bring your own device policy, and it's discretionary per teacher how it's used. I know as a teacher, instead of always fighting it, it was how can I use it to work effectively with my students. So there were times where cell phones had to be away, but I used them with Google Classroom, which was a phenomenal learning tool. I know sometimes it's difficult with the wireless hotspots here to have service in respective areas of the school, but I know that's something that's going to be worked on this summer. There was funding for many more wireless hotspots, so I think that's going to give teachers the capacity to actually dial and channel in more with the technology. From the observations that I've been on, and it's hard because usually when someone sees someone come in the room, they want to, put on their best act for the teacher. Not that always happens, but on the whole, students have been relatively respectful I have seen teachers address it when it's not permitted and ask students to put it away. Sure, there's a student or two that's like, oh, but I want to use, give them a little bit of a tough time, but usually they're pretty respectful. I have seen one student using an application. It was very similar to Google Classroom, where they had a survey out and the students used their phone to respond. 3 students in the room did not have cell phones, but it seemed as though the teacher had already been aware of that and had the Chromebook cart, so they responded that way. Again, I haven't been in all the classrooms. There's so many. I would like to think from a classroom management perspective that teachers are doing the best they can to use technology when possible to assist them, but still maintain the standards that they have. So respecting every teacher's individual right. I'm sure there are many ways that has been done. There have been 2 or 3 teachers that have approached me and said, so-and-so is constantly on their cell phone. I'm tired of nagging this student. Would you mind speaking with them? In which I have. I was not a student that had a cell phone in high school. That was a little bit after my time, so I can't imagine the distraction that it would be, and knowing that maybe a friend is texting someone else and you're not in the loop. But I think if we can spread a consistent message, and if classroom, teachers take ownership of when it's appropriate and when it's not, the majority of the students will be respectful and follow on board. But I do think when we have more access points, the more professional development we can have on how to use technology and integrate it into lessons, especially with 21st century skills being so important right now, I think that will be helpful in channeling their technology use into an appropriate avenue.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. You started off by talking about building relationships with students, and
Yes.
I can see that you've already started that with your colleagues, and that's great. You have your cheering section here. And I noticed that you have a really rich variety of experiences that you're bringing. Some of them related to college, some of them not. So I'm wondering how you can bring all of these rich experiences and share them with your students to help them decide where they might want to go after high school, wherever that is.
Yeah, thank you. I was fortunate to kind of start at a 4-year college in actually an administrative role. So I started administration before I even went into teaching, and I worked with about 500 student athletes and had to make sure they had a 2.0 GPA in order to participate in the respective sport. And at the same time, I started teaching at that same school around 22, so it was quite a challenge. But I really enjoyed having those mentoring conversations about what their next steps were. And I think I'm trying to bring that into where I am here when I have some conversations, especially with the upperclassmen on my caseload, about what those next steps are and the skill sets that they're building here in high school that are going to be transferable. So for example, when a student might be upset that my teacher told me because I didn't do this, I can't do this next, trying to relate it into a real world experience. Well, if you had a job and you didn't show up for something that you needed, you might be fired. You might not be back the next day. So you have to worry when teachers aren't asking you questions. When they're asking questions and they're following up and they want to see your vested success, it's because they care. I've been able to draw on experiences from all different levels, and especially my experience at the community college, I worked with some students. They ranged from age 18 to 82. Myra, she was amazing. And have those conversations about, if college is your next step, or if it's career readiness, or if you might want to get back to it, or what things might look like, or if it's never too late to go back to school. I had a conversation last week with a senior who said, I don't think college is going to be for me the first 2 years. I want to get back there. I need to work and help support my family. Well, we talked about different positions that student might be interested in and skill sets they could obtain. So when school is the time, how they can still be confident transitioning back to wherever they are. And just being able to draw upon experiences at different places, or without using names, I can showcase a story of how someone persevered to get to where they currently are. I've worked with a lot of students that have had some challenges, either at home or financially, and some of my favorite success stories I've been able to share of watching a student who's able to do it, and I think, hearing that story can be inspiring or give somebody hope, even if they're having a tough time, that they too can make it. So I feel very fortunate to be where I am right now, and I've always believed things happen for a reason. So I think my time here is for a reason, and I can draw upon that last decade to help make change.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. O'Gara, do you have anything?
Can I get in there?
Okay. Mr. Mosier?
Yes. Yeah, I'd like to get in. I have a couple of comments and I have one question. My comments relate back to the idea of the competency-based grading. We had started that back in 1973 when I was teaching adult ed in New York. And I used that with the instruction I was using in the mechanical field, and then with when I was teaching in BOCES. And then I also used it when I was teaching computer electronics in Hesser College, and among other things. And it was very interesting to see how it developed, and everybody had accepted it, and they realized that there was two parts to the instruction, and one was the for the teacher to follow the lesson plans and get the point across as to what they're trying to teach, and then the second part was for the students, again, adult ed, that they had to meet the criteria to pass the test. And that was no problem. So in the course of events, not only did I have a committee that where we wrote the curricula, but I also had to write the lesson plans for different parts, and so that the students could complete the internship and become successful, just as I had to do in the many facets of my education. But then also what I had been thinking of, I didn't see any mention on any of the paperwork there about foreign languages. Do you speak any foreign languages? If you do, what are they? Because New Hampshire here in Nashua, we're very diverse. We have approximately 60 different dialects or languages that are spoken. And can you relate to any foreign languages?
I do not fluently speak any foreign languages. I have a polite understanding and speaking knowledge of Spanish. So I've used it infrequently, but I have at times, especially at times when I call home and I'm unaware at first that it's not an English speaker. I usually can get by enough to communicate my message, or I contact the individual teacher at our school that makes those phone calls for us. Anytime I need to have a parent meeting, I make sure that there is a native speaker in the room, since that might not be my first language, to assist me. I have a polite understanding. I think I'm doing okay with that so far, but I certainly understand the resources that I need to ask if I need assistance.
Very good. Just as a matter point of interest.
Sure.
I've been married to a Cuban for 50 years, and I still can't speak fluent, but at least I won't go hungry at a Spanish restaurant.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Oden, do you have anything you'd like to ask?
No, not at this point. I'm sorry I'm late. I had the wrong time down,
That's
so
okay.
I'm sorry.
We're glad
and I
you're here.
apologize. I guess I could ask you one thing. I know it's difficult to come in rather late. What did you find the most challenging this year?
Yeah, that was my first question, so I'll repeat it again. I know you just came in.
Sorry.
No, you're fine.
No.
I just wanted to.
That's okay.
Yeah. No, that's fine. I really found it challenging when you come into a new environment, just learning as quickly as you can the new things about a specific space. Spending over the last decade in Connecticut, I was very familiar with Connecticut state laws, procedures, their evaluation system, and New Hampshire just did things very differently. So coming in, trying to learn as quickly as I could, find the resources to best assist me, and try to establish myself as a part of the culture as quickly as possible, because that's really important to me, to have professional relationships in a positive and conducive way. And part of the way you do that is to be knowledgeable. So I tried to learn as much as I could, listen, ask questions, and be visible at events to support the students and staff.
Okay,
So-
thank you.
Yeah, no, you're welcome.
And again, I apologize.
No, it's fine. Thanks.
Thank you. Well, I'm sure I speak for all of us when I say that it's been a pleasure to have this little chat with you, get to
Thank
know
you.
you a little bit better. And I'd like to know if I could have a motion to recommend Heather Lucy for the position of Assistant Principal at Nashua High School North to the full board.
So moved.
A second?
Second, is there a salary associated with it? Or does that come at the next level?
I don't have that.
It's on the recommendation sheet.
A recommendation sheet?
The personnel recommendations.
Oh,
She's in
okay.
there.
You might want to add that.
Page 5. Sorry, on
Thank
the
you, Mr.
recommendation
Kaufman.
sheet on page 5. My mic
Thank you,
was off.
Mr. Kaufman.
All right, and we'll add at an annual salary of $84,250, and that's for school year 2018-19. Okay, so Mrs. Van Twyver,
Yes?
Mr. Mosher,
Yes.
and Mrs. Porter says yes, so that is carried 3-0. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All right. So that brings us to our second item on the agenda, which is the personnel recommendations. And does anyone have any questions on anything there? Mr. Kaufman?
Yes, I have 2 questions. The number 2 entry is for leave of absence for Adam Marcoux, who's currently the Teachers Union president. And as I understand it, under the terms of the collective bargaining agreement, he's already completed his second, this would be the end, if I'm not mistaken, of his second year. So there's contractual provisions in there where the board, we can only, my understanding is he only gets a 2-year leave of absence. So I'm curious how this request for leave of absence kind of
And
involves, integrates, or reflects the contract.
I believe there's a MOU in the back of the contract that allows for additional years as NTU president for leave from his position.
Okay. So that's been confirmed? We know that that's, I mean, I'm familiar with the MOU, but I remember seeing 2 years in there. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, I looked, it's there.
All right. And the second question I have involves number 24. This involves a renomination and a change of status for a teacher from auto mechanics to machining. I'm very supportive, obviously, of the machining program that we're trying to develop here, but I'm concerned that this teacher, do they have the appropriate credentials to run that machine shop? And has that been confirmed and verified?
Yes, he has. So that teacher, because enrollments in automotive were low, we ripped the least senior teacher, which is number 24. He has the right under the contract to be recalled into a position where he is qualified, and he is qualified. So automotive and machining is under the umbrella of comprehensive technology education. So it's in the contract book, it just shows that overall certification. There's many sub-certifications underneath that. of which machining is one and automotive is another one. So he has a statement of eligibility to be the machining teacher.
Because I'm concerned, this is a specialty. This equipment is highly specialized. Does this person know how to operate that equipment?
Well, some of that experience does come from automotive work as well. I can't speak at that detailed level whether I assume he does know how to use the machinery.
I've spoken to some teachers in that technology area, and I'm told it's one of the most dangerous places we have in the school. That equipment spinning as quickly as it does, hands, shirts, things like you could never wear like something like this, and even long hair. I would suggest that would be tied back or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm just very concerned. I would like to know that this person is certified on the machines he's going to teach, because I realize it's a specialty.
He
And I'm
has
just
a statement of eligibility from the Department of Education to teach machining. And in automotive as well, there are dangerous things that you have to watch out for as well.
I understand he has a certificate of eligibility, but that doesn't answer my question. I would like to know this person is essentially he needs to be a specialist to operate that equipment if he's going to teach it. So if the answer is we have eligibility and that's all you've got, that's fine. I just hope it's adequate. And will there be 2 teachers in that classroom? Do you know what kind of enrollment will be in there?
No, I don't know what kind of enrollment. I know there's enough for one teacher.
I'm sorry?
They're expecting, or there is enough enrollment for one teacher. I'm
you
not
don't know
usually
what the size of the
involved in
class is.
student enrollments, I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you.
All of those people have to be well certified also by OSHA for the operation and of the machines and the ability to teach the operation and safety that's involved.
You know, I know, if I may, sometimes for example, I worked in a warehouse once, and I had to go to literally, you do get a class, you take a class in how to operate a forklift, and believe it or not, they give you a test, and you get a license that you have to wear when you use that equipment on the floor of the factory. And I would think that just like Cisco has a certification to program its switches, or Microsoft even to be an Office certified whatever, administrator, DBA, or whatever, there's an exam, there's a certification for a particular piece of software and also for equipment. And I would like to know if this person has that industry training on the equipment that they will be teaching. I understand the certification from the state, but I'm asking a deeper question in terms of capabilities and understanding.
I understand the question that you're asking. I will look into, A, whether there is a requirement for him to have special machining, and if there is, B, does he have it?
Thank you.
Ms. O'Hensey?
Thank you. So if he has a letter of eligibility, he doesn't have the credentials yet. Will he be taking training to augment his credentials?
Get off it.
What was that? Excuse me?
Yeah, excuse me.
Was that a sneeze, Mr. Mosier?
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Did you say something, Mr. Mosier?
Nothing of any consequence.
Okay, thank you. Ms. O'Hensey?
So I just want to know if we are going to train him so he will get the credential. It's one thing saying he's eligible and then we're putting him in. We have a shortage for somebody with that that credential.
We do.
But are we going to train him so that it's just a temporary problem and that we'll correct?
Anybody with a statement of eligibility has to do a plan, and he has to develop a plan to teach machining, not teach machining, but know everything about machining. So that's going to be built into a plan, which goes to the superintendent to sign, and then goes up to the state who evaluates whether or not the plan is acceptable. Once they find the plan is acceptable, they issue an intern license, and you have to, every year, we have to follow up with the state on how well they're doing on the plan, and then at the end of the plan, they're supposed to meet all the competencies for that plan. So I imagine in machining, anything that he's not up to par with, he will do. This individual had extensive, several degrees in not just automotive, but I want to say in other technology areas. So he does have some other things that, he went into college courses for that would be close to this,
Okay.
if I'm remembering correctly.
As long as we help him get the tools he needs.
Yes,
That's my
we
big
will.
concern.
Yes.
That'd be great.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions? Are we good? Okay, so may I have a motion to accept the personnel recommendations dated May 23rd, 2018?
I move to accept the personnel recommendations dated May 23rd, 2018.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, and a vote, Ms. Van Twyver,
Yes.
Mr. Mosher,
Yes.
and Mrs. Porter, yes. So the motion carries. Ms. Van Twyver?
I do have a personnel question for Ms. O'Gara. Have we hired filled the two data analysts that are open, the seats that are open? Have we made any progress with that? Or have we?
I think that there's a final candidate for one of the positions.
Do you have any idea when that person would come on board?
No.
Okay, thank you.
So Hensy?
Thank you. I'd like to know when we're going to get started on the CTE interviews. And is the board going to meet the acting interim CTE director at South?
There is no acting interim director at South.
Well, it's a consultant that
There
we
is a
have?
consultant that's assisting in the Perkins grant.
Okay, but the
It's
board,
it's an independent contract.
okay, and is it over $10,000?
I have not involved in that part.
I guess since it's not part of the operating budget, we don't see it, but if he's consulting, it would just be nice for the board to meet him. And if he's only going to be here till July 1, I just want to make sure that we start the process.
He's not an interim in any way. He's really truly a consultant to help with the Perkins grant. So there's not like a set time frame for him. It's not like he's not covering for the CTE director that's missing, and he's not an employee.
Okay, so then we need a director at South as soon as possible.
Yes, we have, because you have copies
Right.
of all the candidates.
Right, and it's an interesting pool, so I'm just hoping that gets started. So this is the end of May. We've got like 6 weeks before we need one to start for the next calendar year. And I just don't want to miss the boat in terms of not having good candidates to look at. And these we may have had for over a month, and some of them could have been hired away. So I just want to know if we're committed to getting that interview rolling.
I believe so, but I don't have any further details. Truly, I do not have any.
I believe you, but is it the superintendent that initiates that, or the HR chairman that initiates? Who would be the person that would initiate that?
The assistant superintendent.
So, okay, one of the assistant superintendents.
Right, for secondary, Donna.
Thank you.
Mr. Kaufman?
Thank you. So the CTE director from South left the district in March. That job opening was posted before she even left, in the middle of March. So here, March, April, May, so it's 3 months later. In the past, we've been very timely and moved quickly. So I'm just surprised, as is Ms. Hohensee, Any idea what the delay is?
No,
What the reason is?
I don't know.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Okay. I would like to make a motion to table review of policy GCF and policy BDEB until our next HR committee meeting on June 20th, 2018. Do I need a motion to table?
So,
Okay, I'll make a motion to table those two policies. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay.
ask why?
I want to wait until the full committee is here, with Mrs. Timmons here, because since it's such a small committee, I think it's important that we're all here to look at those.
Can I just ask a question about it?
Mr. Hoffman?
Do we know who wrote these two policy changes?
I think they're still under consideration, so I think that
Somebody wrote them to submit them to the committee, so do you know who that was?
I believe it was Mrs. Timmons.
Okay, she wrote these both?
I believe she did.
And you
Okay.
didn't have any part in it?
In that particular version, I did.
I have never,
didn't.
I didn't have a part in this either. Did
Which
you have
is-
a part in this, Mr. Mosher?
No, I did not.
Okay.
So I think it's a good idea to hold
I think
off
so,
on this.
too.
Okay.
I
All
would
right.
like to ask a question, though. Well, maybe I'll wait.
Okay,
I'll wait on it.
thank you. All right, so Ms. Van Twyver,
Yes?
Mr. Mosher,
Yes.
Mrs. Porter says yes. That's 3-0, so the motion carries.
Can you, was it Mosher that put the
Mosher?
second?
It must have been, yes.
Yes.
We'll say it is anyways.
Yes. He was the only one who could, I think. All right, so could I, in that event, have Ms. Hohensee?
I just wanted to say that back in December, we had another GCF type policy that was proposed at the full board, and the superintendent was going to review it and get back to HR or the board, I don't know which. Could that come along with this June 20th? Because timely, that should have come back in the 6-month interim, and they're very related, so I just thought.
Which is that policy?
It was a policy that Mr. Kaufman presented.
Okay, I'll have to look. I don't know what.
Right,
that
and
was.
it's in the minutes, and, it's attached. And
When did you say that was?
was it December 11th?
Yeah, if it was presented at the HR committee December 11th and discussed, and there was a motion that the board, would you like me to read what the board acted on at that time? So you'll have
Do you
better
have
context.
the policy number?
Yeah, I'm going to
It was
answer
a
you.
-R.
Well, it was the BDEB, and the conclusion of that group that assembled thought because it had some procedural aspects to it, that it should become a -R to the BDEB. And that's in the minutes. It was on December 11th. And Mrs. Oden moved, seconded by Dr. Moritaki, that the draft of the 110917 submitted to the board by Mr. Kaufman labeled Administrative Interview Requirements for Assistant Director, Director, Assistant Principal, and Principal be forwarded to the superintendent for review and comment. The superintendent's input should then be shared with the Human Resources Committee at a future meeting on a date that is mutually agreeable, and the board voted on that back on December 11th. So if any action is going to occur on BDEB, it should include the recommendations from the superintendent on what was presented back in December, on December 11th.
I'll look into that. I'm not familiar with that, but I will research it. Okay. Are there any other questions? Okay, so can we have a motion to adjourn?
Personnel recommendation.
Oh, we did this,
Oh, we did? Oh, all right, I'm sorry.
right? Yeah.
Motion to adjourn?
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, Ms. Van Twyver?
Yes.
Mr. Mosher?
Yes.
And Mrs. Porter says yes, so we are adjourned at 6:20.